What year did you graduate from law school at Northwestern?
52.
Oh.
And that summer I went to Europe with these 4 other guys.
Oh, that was the summer.
Yeah, and then the next year, having free time, nothing that I had to do, particularly in November and December. It was dead time. The girls spent all their time addressing Christmas cards by hand, just do something there.
So you started working with Don and your father the year after you finished law school?
No. I started working in 1946, about 2 weeks after my 22nd birthday. I got out of the Navy back that late spring, May or something like that. And went out with my father the first time on like June 14th or something that year.
1946.
Yeah, I was just turned 22.
It was like a year after the war ended.
Yeah.
And so then you worked for some years, and then were you in law school while you were working, or did you stop?
Well, I was. He started that in the fall of '45. So
Mm-hmm.
there was nothing. I mean, he was going around this cold canvas.
Yeah.
Nobody ever heard of this brand. It was anyway.
Didn't he buy the name and some sort of inventory, or didn't he buy it from someone?
No.
He started it from scratch?
No, he was looking when he was let out of Procter & Gamble.
In what year was that? 44?
Probably the beginning of 45 or late 40, somewhere around it. Because he spent the better part of a year looking. First of all, he was 53 and a half years old. And he said, he's not going to go back. He's not going to work for a big corporation again.
How many years had he been at Procter & Gamble?
Like 35 years.
That long, yeah.
A long time. But I know he and my mother, I remember they went to Kankakee to look at an electric appliance store. Well, he didn't want to be in the I don't know. Anyway, somehow he latched onto this. From they had this little factory. They were at 1834 West North Avenue in a little loft up there, assembling these electric fence controllers. They made 7,000 units a year at that time. 7,000. When we were at our height, and we took half, back in the 60s, 70s, we took half of the factory output, which was 90,000 units. So we took as many as 45,000 in our best years there, 73 and 70. 7,000 is, they had 3 or 4
workers on an assembly
line.
line?
There were Polish women at that time, didn't speak English. Later on, they were Mexican or something, didn't speak English. But they would sit there and they assemble these, little electric with a little soldering iron and so forth, put this stuff together and box it up. And, they were, the guy, Dick Turk, that ran the place and owned it, such as it was looking for any kind of distributors. That was the ad. So they gave my father the state of Illinois, happy to have somebody that,
Because at that point they were assembling and selling them to whom? I mean, they didn't have much in the way of...
They had very little They had a distributor in New York State, Lee McMahon, and he was their pride and joy. He had a standing order for 100 units every week during the season. It was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But they sold them. A lot of them were sold through the mail, like ads in Prairie Farmer, directly to the farmer, and so forth. That industry grew up during the war because everything was rationed. You couldn't get steel, and the government made steel available to manufacturers who would produce electric fence controllers because you didn't need barbed wire. You just had 16 gauge, as thick as the thing around my eyeglasses there, smooth wire. You didn't need these big 6.5-foot steel posts. You took these little rods like you put up in your driveway or something,
Mm-hmm. So the government made the steel available?
Available, yeah. You couldn't. Everything was on a requisition. In the war, you couldn't get anything.
Yeah.
You couldn't get gas without you got coupons or something, and you couldn't buy the gas without giving the coupons and so forth. So they encouraged that because it was a substitute for all this stuff that took a lot of steel. A lot of times for hog fencing and poultry and stuff, you have this wire netting fence. Well, that wasn't available, So So electric fence. So everybody and his dog began making electric fence controllers. I mean, it was just a seller's market. You know, there was about 24 companies during the war.
Wow.
Some of them were large companies. One of the big sellers was Prime Manufacturing. That was their trademark, Prime. And they were made up in Milwaukee. And this Prime Manufacturing, their main business was making these signals for railroad crossings and stuff like that, you know. But they got into this thing because it was very profitable, and they were selling them right and left. And as I say, it was a seller's market in the war. The farmers would respond to ads in the farm magazines like Prairie Farmer in Illinois and Wallace's Farmer in Iowa, you know, and buy them direct.
Mm-hmm.
And they had deals. You get 3 farmers together, and you pay for 2 of them to get the third. You know, they had it worked out. So 3 farmers would get together and order it, you know, and so forth. But they didn't even have to send salesmen out or anything to anywhere to get stores. All that they
Were
did.
any of these products patented? The electric fencer, was it patented, or was it just a? I mean,
no, I suppose there were patents for various ones. I don't know. There were different styles, different kinds. Most of them were all. When we got in, we're all battery operated. Because a lot of out in Iowa, they didn't even have electricity out there. It wasn't until 47, 48, 49, the REA came in and put up what they call the high lines, you know, electrified these farms. They didn't have electricity, so it was 100% battery. When we used to sell batteries, you know, we sold posts and wire and insulators and all the knickknacks, clips and things to hold the wire, and we sold batteries, these hotshot batteries, if you know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they use
I remember those.
Yeah, well, that's because they were used primarily in electric fence. They used them in motorboats, I guess, stuff like that. But the battery company, that we had Willard batteries at that time. They were a big name in wet batteries, and they produced these dry batteries. And they had a deal where they would ship. The shipping was a problem because it's heavier. If you had a minimum of 200 pounds, they would drop ship for us, so we didn't have to, we give them, if somebody could order 200 pounds of batteries, dry batteries, that's flashlight batteries, telephone cells, hotshot batteries, these big radio packs that they used then, when they were about 15 inches long and, great big things that they used. All these areas didn't have electricity, and if you could make up 200 pounds, they would ship it prepaid, no freight. Well, that was a big talking point. So we get these dealers that maybe the hotshot battery might have weighed about 9-10 pounds. You'd need a couple dozen of them to make up 200 pounds. A lot of dealers could sell that many, but a lot of them couldn't. But if they could order a dozen or a half a dozen or something, we can make up the weight. Mm-hmm. And I always was able, like down in southern Illinois, and so they add in a radio pack, which was probably 15 pounds to bring it up to weight, So those great big bulky things. Mm-hmm. I remember the guy that represented them was telling us one of their big markets then was Cuba. Huh. They sold these things for radios in Cuba because there wasn't any widespread electricity down there. People used the radio. But that was a long time ago. We're going to be late. We may not have time for anything. I want a cup of coffee. I don't really care.